Picture this. It's 1782. You've just pulled off one of the biggest underdog victories in modern history. And now you get an offer no American has ever gotten before or since. They want to make you a king. That's exactly what happened to George Washington. And what he did next? Well, it would forge the destiny of a brand new nation. So let me ask you a question. What do you think is the single most powerful decision in all of American history? Your mind probably jumps to a famous declaration, right? Or maybe a huge decisive battle, a landmark law, perhaps? Well, what if I told you it was none of those things? The answer, it might surprise you, because the most powerful decision in our history wasn't something that was done at all.
No, it was something that wasn't done. It was about one man, a man who had absolute power right there in the palm of his hand, who made the choice to just say no. And that one refusal, it changed everything.
Okay, so to really get the weight of that no, we have to understand the man behind it. And here's the thing about George Washington. He wasn't born a legend. He was forged.
I mean, look at his profile. This guy's rise was not preordained in any way. He wasn't royalty. He didn't come from some super wealthy family. He was a farmer from Virginia, a surveyor, a soldier. He literally built his reputation from the ground up on pure discipline, hard work, and an iron will. And pretty early in his career, he started to get this aura of invincibility. It's crazy. During the French and Indian War, he'd be in these ambushes where every single officer around him was killed. Bullets would literally tear through his coat, but he'd walk away without a scratch. His men started to whisper they truly believed he was protected by something much bigger than just luck. And that's the key right there. When the Continental Congress was looking for a commander, they didn't pick him because of his win-loss record on the battlefield. Frankly, it was kind of mixed. No, they chose him for his presence. The man had a gravity about him. When George Washington walked into a room, people just believed that whatever he was leading, it simply could not fail. And, well, that belief was about to be tested in the most brutal way you can imagine. A revolution against the biggest, baddest empire on the planet. And you really have to get the scale of this. His army, constantly outnumbered, constantly outgunned. They went through literal starvation during that horrific winter at Valley Forge. There were moments when it felt like the entire revolution was held together by nothing more than his personal determination. And yet somehow, against all of those odds, in 1781, they did it. They won at Yorktown. So, the war's over, America is free. And just like that, Washington is probably the most famous man on the planet. But here's the twist. His greatest battle was just getting started. Because now, everyone is wondering the same thing. I mean, think about it. He's got the absolute loyalty of a battle-hardened army. He has the adoration of an entire nation. He could have done anything he wanted. So the question was, what would he do with all that power? And that temptation wasn't just hypothetical. It got a name, the Nicola Proposal. In May of 1782, a bunch of his own officers, led by a guy named Colonel Louis Nicola, actually wrote him a letter. Their argument was pretty simple. Look, this democracy thing is messy. The new country is weak. What America really needs is a king, and that king, General, should be you. So, this is it. This is the crossroads for the brand new nation. Are they going to go down path one, become just another monarchy ruled by kings and bloodlines? Or will they risk it all on path two and try to build something totally new, a republic led by its citizens and based on principles? The whole American experiment, everything they fought for, it all came down to this one man's choice. And what happened next wasn't just one test of his character, but two. Two huge moments that would show everyone, once and for all, who this man they'd put all their trust in really was. So his response to that letter about being king, he wasn't flattered. He didn't even think about it. He was furious. He wrote back immediately, saying the very idea of a crown was one of the most painful things he could imagine, and he told them to never, ever mention it to him again. He just shut it down, completely. But you can't kill an idea that powerful with just one letter. Because that temptation, that idea of a military takeover, it didn't just go away. A year later, in 1783, his officers were beyond angry. They hadn't been paid by the broke Congress, so they started plotting.
They were going to march on the government and take power by force. This became known as the Newburgh Conspiracy. And you guessed it, they wanted Washington to lead them. So he meets with these officers who are on the verge of mutiny in this super tense hall in Newburgh, New York. He gets up to speak, trying to reason with them, pleading, but he can feel it. He's losing the room. For maybe the first time in his life, his authority, his sheer presence, it isn't working. His words are failing. And then he stops. In what must have felt like a moment of desperation, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out something almost none of his men had ever seen him use: a pair of reading glasses. As he fumbles to put them on, he says these quiet words. And in that one moment, that one small, vulnerable act, the entire myth of the invincible General Washington just shattered. They weren't looking at a god of war anymore. They were looking at an old, tired man who had given everything, his youth, his health, for the same cause they had. And just like that, the anger in the room just evaporated. These tough soldiers who were seconds away from overthrowing their own government started to cry. The rebellion was over. Just like that. And that right there, that tells you everything about Washington's character. His real power wasn't in grasping for command. It was in the revolutionary idea of letting it go. You know, he was actually modeling himself after this old Roman general named Cincinnatus, who famously saved the Roman Republic and then, instead of taking power, just went back to being a farmer. So when the war was officially over, Washington did something that no victorious general had done in, well, forever. He resigned his command and just went home. Went back to his farm. And get this, when his old enemy, King George III of England, heard about it, he was blown away. He said if he does that, he will be the greatest man in the world. And then he did it again. Years later, after being unanimously elected the first president, he serves 2 terms, and then he just walks away. He refuses a 3rd term, setting this unbelievable precedent that power in America isn't permanent. It belongs to the people, not the person in the chair. And that is what made him, as his friend Henry Lee famously said, first in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen. See, he wasn't just the first to lead the charge. He was the first to put the country's principles ahead of his own ambition. When you boil it all down, that's the heart of his story. Every single time he was faced with ultimate power, with ultimate temptation, Washington chose to be a citizen, not a king. His legacy, really, isn't about the battles he won, it's about the power he said no to. So that leaves us with something to think about, right? Washington's story kind of redefines what we think of as leadership. It makes you wonder, maybe being first isn't about having the most power. Maybe it's about being the first to serve, the first to sacrifice, and maybe most importantly, the first to know when to walk away.